And we're live. Book club is back. We're talking Southern Bastards. And I got this jamoke.
Bastard.
I was going to say jamoke from up north. How you doing, Whitewell?
Good. I no longer live up north.
I know, but you're still from there, right?
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
No,
We got this jamoke down here, Chris from Chaos and Comics. How you doing, Chris?
Hello. How's everybody?
Hey, I totally missed the final episode, right? Last night was the competition championship.
No, we can't. I can't. I asked them to cancel it.
Okay.
Yeah, to all the blackout stuff. I wasn't sure what I was going to look at. Yeah. So next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday will be the one. It's just you and Bearded Comic Bro.
No, well, I think I also convinced him because he wanted to do it like the next day or the day after. I also convinced him you could do like a fun undercard, like you can have others play each other, whoever's available on Tuesday. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what's supposedly going to happen, but he hasn't since I told him. I haven't heard anything else. So I don't know. I'm just going there to win.
Did you see that? I saw Alec laughing.
Yeah, I'm glad we got someone watching.
So that's my daughter. She's supposed to be in bed going to sleep, but apparently she's watching a show with Bastard in the title. Hey, sweetie, I think you should go to bed. And Charlie's like, hey, you should go to bed too. There you go. My number one fan. This is going to be how it is when Alec and I are doing this show in like 15 years and my kids are off in college and we're still doing this. So there you go.
We hopping up.
I mean, I got nothing else going on, so I'll
right. I mean, book ahead 15 years. We'll be doing volumes 3 and 4, right?
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah. Hopefully, there's a volume 5 by the time in 15 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know Chris, we've had Chris on the show before, so you should have subscribed to Chris's channel by now. But I put the link to his channel in the description for the video. So if you don't know Chaos and Comics, he's in the chats everywhere supporting people. He's got his own channel dropping reviews and stuff. And when I went and bought a ton of Image comics before this whole quarantine started in strength, I snagged these Southern Bastards trades. And Chris was like, you got a bunch of great reading there, Monstrous and Southern Bastards. And I was like, well, when we get around to some of these, I need to pull you in here. So I was like, dude, I know you've read these. Let's get you back here for Southern Bastards Volume 1 and 2.
Yeah.
How long has it been, Chris, for you since you've read this?
35 minutes.
Got him.
Come on.
A couple of years at least. I would say it was. I mean, I never ever stopped reading comics, but I definitely wasn't. I would show up every month or two and like buy 4 things off like the Eisner Award list. And I would say it was this and probably Saga that made me just keep going in, like where I just churning them out, where I was reading them as much as regular books. So so this is definitely one that, made me like start talking about it on YouTube and stuff and finding other comic channels. So so I would say it's recently very influential for me.
And Alec, for you, was this the first time you've ever read it?
I had read at least the first few issues. I don't think I ever got as deep as the second trade because I didn't remember it. So, but I definitely read the first trade before.
So I had some people asking in the chat what we're reading. I figured I just would scroll that sucker across the bottom. And for me, I first read this during quarantine, and I will probably say, just spoiler alert, it's probably my favorite read of anything I've done during this quarantine. As far as these new books that I purchased, for me, it was like, I've got to talk about this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's gripping.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's go to the chat. Say hello to, hi, Kate. Hello to you. I love the school picture you got there. I didn't realize you changed your photo. Gore Vidal. This is an interesting trinity. Hey, second time, back to back. Not back to back. Sorry, it was 3 weeks ago. I think.
Yeah,
we got Sam. I am is here. Hello, Sam. How you doing, brother? Good to have you here. TK's Batcave. I was in his chat earlier when he was on with Mo, and they were doing a great show earlier today. So thank you for returning the favor. Stay Puff 1983. Just before we went live, I was talking about how I'm rewatching The Wire and it feels so relevant And I'm looking forward to talking The Wire with that man right there and Fire Guy Ryan soon enough. Hello, Cece. We are reading Southern Bastards tonight. Yeah, Kachung, we got Chaos with us. This show is going to be chaotic to the extreme. And Gore says Chaos and Comics is one of his favorite channels. So hey, we'll love there. Oh. Gomer, hey. That's the joke my wife makes when we're driving cross country and she sees bales. She's like, hey. She never fails to make that joke. It's constant. CC says is it I don't know. CC. Could be a he or she. Big fan. Says OMG, big fan. Stay Puff says, I'm hoping to reread the first 2 volumes to hopefully join you guys tonight, but things got in the way today. Hey, it's all good, Stay Puff. You're here for the chat. We're here to talk. And honestly, when I read these 2 volumes, I felt like you couldn't talk about one without the other. They kind of had to go together in my mind. I don't know if volume 3 fits as well because I haven't gotten that far. I stopped after these 2, but I'd be curious to hear from all of you. Goverdal says Southern Bastards like Lazarus was one of the initial comics he read when he got back into collecting again, not Saga. Sorry, Chaos. Lazarus is so good is what I hear too, Gomer, and it's sitting right over there. It's waiting for me to read, and I'm hoping to get into Lazarus soon. I'm on a kick of Greg Rucka. I'm even watching his Stumptown show on Hulu, enjoying that.
Yeah, I gotta watch that because I really enjoyed that book when it first came out.
And I love Kobe Smulders. She's great. TJ says, is this going to be another good review? For me, I'm promising you right now it's going to be me gushing a little bit.
Spoiler alert.
Right?
Alex is gripping, so. Stay
Puff says he just finished season 5 of The Wire. So I'm behind. I'm only 2 episodes in on season 5, but it's a 10-episode season, so it'll go pretty quick. All right. I think we should start. I mean, we said a few months ago that we were going to start doing like right off the top, just hit it with a grade. So I'm gonna go around the wheel here. I'm giving this an A, like a straight up A for me. 5 out of 5. These 2 trades together, I really enjoyed. I'm gonna throw it to Alec though. He did not expect this question.
Yeah, I mean, A minus. Like I really, really liked, but if I'm comparing it to things
that you say you really, really like, but
I really liked it, but like if I'm looking at other things, I would give like a straight up A to, like that's why it's like, you know, a 9.2.
Hey, that's a respectable grade, especially from that guy. Chris, what about you, man?
I'd go A minus. I think there's some art choices I absolutely love, and then a couple that would knock it down to, you know, a terrible A minus. But definitely an A minus. You know, I like reading about football in comics, which I don't get to do very often. So
how often does that happen, right?
Not very often.
Well, until they did the Friday Night Lights comic book, I think you're going to be having to be patient on that one.
My wife will read that one.
So I'm going to give a quick rundown on what the basic plot is for these. For those of you in the chat who are trying to decide, maybe you want to read it, maybe you're interested in this, I'll give a basic rundown. Then I kind of want to talk trade by trade because we're doing trade 1 and trade 2 here. So the story centers around this small town in Alabama in Craw County. You have Earl Tubb, who is an older gentleman coming back home to his hometown to deal with his father's estate, which is basically a ramshackle house. He keeps calling his daughter to leave messages all through the first trade here. And he's dealing with the local thugs who all seem to belong to local football coach Ulyss. Am I pronouncing that right? I think Ulyss Boss. Mm-hmm. And for these 2 trades, that's pretty much all you need. Ulyss Boss is, quote, the villain for trade volume 1. Earl is the character come to town to try to settle some things both financially and somewhat emotionally, socially, that he has historically kind of connected to this town. Meanwhile, Ulyss is running this town like the kingpin, doing the things the way he wants, coaching the local football team, the high school team, and trade volume 2 kind of gives you Ulysses' life story and backstory. And the reason I wanted to do two of these together was the idea that you get both of these characters presented in what I think is a really even-handed kind of way, without a lot of like necessarily white hat, black hat. They definitely together give you a well-rounded view.
I mean, which you also get to, I think, and which is why it's a good why it was a good idea to do both volumes together, is that in one, Ulysses is definitely the antagonist, and in volume 2, he's definitely the protagonist, right? So it's he's clearly not a good guy, but you get you get the story told in two ways with him, so.
And it's very interesting that you made the Friday Night Lights joke, because it's very similar in some ways, where it's like this small football town where that is what is the most important thing to everybody. Now, obviously, in Friday Night Lights, unless there's like some weird subtext that I didn't get while watching that show, the coach is not a mob boss. But he does can't lose. But in the same regard, like, he does still have this influential pull in the town. And so, like, with a very small, like, turn of the dial, Friday Night Lights is this book.
I totally agree. And I jokingly said to Alec before Chris jumped in, backstage, I was saying, I'm going to talk TV a ton, because I feel like these books reminded me of some of my favorite TV shows. Obviously, Friday Night Lights came up, but Justified, I freaking love Justified. Small town in the South and all the history, characters coming home and having to deal with it. That came up for me a ton. I feel like there's a lot of great, I guess that for me, that just means a lot of good storytelling, a lot of good character work being done here, because I was connecting to just a lot of good stories. And obviously Walking Tall, if you guys have seen the film Walking Tall, there's definitely a love affair for that film, the original film going on here, all the way down to dude walking around beating the crap out of people with a stick.
Well, right.
Let me just beat on you.
It was really interesting because, is it all right if I spoil some stuff?
This is a spoiler show.
Well, I know, but I don't know if you want to get to it yet.
No, but I'm also going to remind people that, like, you can spoil a read like this and still absolutely love it when you sit down to read it. I don't think we're going to ruin anything of your enjoyment. You will still get a ton out of enjoying this. So sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that, like, you start reading this and it seems like this classic Walking Tall, John Wick, like, revenge story where this guy gets involved in this situation, maybe like really not without his intention of getting involved as much as he thinks he is. So what happens is he's just minding his own business at the beginning of the book, eating lunch at this diner, and this guy comes in who's like, "Oh, I recognize you. You used to live here." And they kind of reconnect, knowing that they went to school together back when the main character went to Vietnam and then never came back to the town because he had some sort of resentment for the town and his father. And this guy who's talking to the main character says, "You should leave. Like, you should not have come back." This basically saying, like, this place is no good. And turns out this guy is in some sort of debt to Coach Boss. And these thugs come to, like, kill him or wrangle him up or whatever. And then the main character beats up one of the guys with a friolator.
Which is great. There's a lot of really good violence in these reads.
And saves this dude who ends up then getting killed anyway. But then they take out some revenge of their Coach Boss and his dude take out some revenge of his own on the guy. And then that kind of creates this cycle of violence.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, like, back and forth of, like, trying to do some good, but in a small town run by one vengeful, violent dude. Right. Like, it just is a cycle of violence.
To send a message, they beat up this kid and put him in the hospital, and that's what really sets off the guy to go, like, get this stick and start beating the hell out of people. And when you start reading it, you're like, okay, I've seen this story before, right? It is Walking Tall. It is any number of these things where this guy just gets seen too much and decides to just run train on this town and clean it up. But at the end of the first trade, Coach Boss kills him.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what is this story now if it's not what I thought it was? So it's a really interesting twist on that.
So, yeah, Chris, let's talk this twist. The end of issue 1, they kill...
Trade one.
Trade 1. The end of trade 1, they legit kill who you think would be the protagonist. How did you feel when did you read it in a trade, or were you buying the issues?
No, I was only reading trades at that time. So I mean, yeah, that's the only thing that can be a spoiler here. It almost there's a couple other shows that have done that, but I think the most famous one is probably Game of Thrones, where you think a protagonist is Game of Thrones spoilers, by the way, is a protagonist and he gets his head lopped off essentially. Right. And I was actually, when I read the trade originally, I was not sure that he was dead, to be honest.
Sure.
Yeah.
Until the start of the second trade where you're at his funeral.
Where it's made clear. Yeah. I mean, you could see he's beat up pretty bad and stuff, but you're like, well,
what I love to your point, Trade Volume 2 still starts with Earl's name. Earl's name is the first thing on the back of the trade. Earl Tubb thought he could clean up his hometown by carrying a big stick. He was wrong.
Well, that is not untrue.
It's not untrue, but it's like he is still clearly a big part of what's going on. But yeah, so like your reaction was
like, well, I mean, it was clear that he lost. Like he didn't clean it up. It wasn't a Walking Tall situation. The only other thing I would say, I can't remember which you two said that, is it's not a Sopranos situation where it's a violent, vengeful guy, or even an organized crime guy, to be honest. Like the only reason he kills him is because he's not allowing him to focus on football.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's
he actually gets mad at his thugs for creating this problem. He's not like, oh, I want to kill this guy because he's got my way. He's like, you have to get rid of this guy because I'm trying to focus on this game.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. We find when we get to Volume 2, we'll see how intensely he is about football. But I think that's probably the way. A lot of this is sort of weird because we're two North and Southwest people, two Southwest people talking about the South, right? So how much do we understand it? And the best way I could always try to understand it is that I'm a football fan too, but I don't think I could ever understand the excitement. And that's what he's trying to portray here. The excitement of high school football in these small towns in Alabama and other states in the South, and I think that was the other twist. That's probably, so the protagonist dying at the end is also big, but that's probably the biggest thing that makes it not The Wire or not The Sopranos or not some gangster movie that's just set in the South. You know what I mean? Is that this is what drives this guy, and what'll make him turn to violence is just because he's just so interested in football,
Yeah.
So,
and then there's almost a secondary twist where you find out that he's talking to his daughter on the phone this whole time, who's in the military, and then you're like, oh, okay, so then I see what the story is now. It's about the daughter coming into the town to do what he started, or finish what he started. And then the entire second trade is about Coach Boss's life growing up and his connection to football. And you're like, okay, well, now what is this book? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just,
it's a great thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I almost enjoyed the second trade more.
I would agree.
And it's, I would say, almost standalone. You could read it on its own.
You could, but I do definitely, after I've read them both, I do definitely enjoy the second trade more. But what happened in the first trade colors it.
Absolutely.
Certainly, yeah. Right? I wouldn't recommend reading on its own, but it's.
You read the second trade, you don't know, that, maybe he's turning into a bad guy, but you sort of already know what he's going to turn into, it's just well timed. And certainly the Jason Aaron part of the story for me would get an AA+, right? And just the way it's timed, even the way his choice, and we won't get into this, I know, but his choices in volume 3 take another turn too, by the way.
I'm excited because I ended up buying the trades 3, 4. Is it just 3 and 4? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's only up to 4. And not plot wise, I won't have to get into that.
I have the books.
Yeah, just style wise, take a little bit of a turn. So I forget the line of thought we were going, but yeah, volume 2 I think is definitely I like more, but that's really because volume 1 set me up for it with something that I thought, like you said, is just a Walking Tall story with Jason Aaron's just right amount of timing and pepper to it.
Well, so I'm going to say straight up, I do not like football. I don't care for football. I'm forced to play fantasy football, and I can't stand it, and I bitch and moan about it every year when it comes around. I found this riveting, and I agree that second trade, I was so excited to hear, well, where's this going to go now that they've killed the hero. It was the origin story of the coach was just absolutely phenomenal, the way it was laid out. And football is just the setting, and the family dramas that play out on the off-field side of this are amazing. The way coach's father plays in, the way the original coach plays in, the way the gentleman who's like his coach's assistant plays in. I think the whole, it's just the setting for something that's far bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I will say, for me, the bigger twist than, hey, we're going to kill the protagonist, for me is we're going to make you appreciate the villain. And that's what makes trade 2 so riveting for me, is like, we hated this guy. The end of that issue, that first trade, you have to hate Coach Boss. And then here we're going to spend 5-6 issues and make you feel like, no, there's more going on here. And it was amazing.
Yeah, I think the best villains in shows or books or comics or whatever are those that are more multidimensional. The ones that are like just evil are more boring to me. And you talk about TV, and we brought this up briefly before we went live, is Deadwood and Al Swearingen on that show, who is presented as the bad guy at the beginning of the show, but throughout the series, like, you find out that he's not necessarily really the bad guy. I mean, he's a bad guy, but
there are worse guys.
There are worse guys, and you're still like so connected to his story, even though he does bad things.
The one thing I would say to you, and I agree, I like the villains with a lot more layers that just aren't the devil. You know what I mean? But I can't think of another one where that's essentially what he was in volume 1. So for me, I had months between reading these, right?
Yeah.
The original time, like, that's actually what he was. He was just a really one-sided villain in the first trade. And the first trade was really good. And, I read, and, Jason Aaron and stuff like that. And that's almost why the second trade is good, because you get this situation where he is just one-sided. When you read the second trade, that colors in all of this other stuff of his, in his history. It turns him into that multi-layered villain,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as that happening, most of the time a villain is multi-layered, or he's just evil. You know what I mean? I can't think of a situation, maybe Darth Vader, but where he's essentially just pure evil. And then later on, when we start telling the rest of the story, we start realizing that maybe, that we start getting a little color to him, and that he's really has more levels to him than just being bad.
Yeah, it's that sympathy for the devil that I think that Jason Aaron really layers through volume 2 of this storyline. And several people in the chat are mentioning it. I want to just say hello to some folks here. Hialeah came by, so thank you for coming by. Mo came by. Thank you for coming, brother. He had a show earlier today. You guys should check it out. We said Biggie Shack, hello to you. I appreciate you guys coming by. Geeky Mama Bear from the Funko community that I recently met up with. Thank you for coming by. Gray Matter Hulk says, it's about getting out. The hero left and was drugged back by the death of his father. The kids play football to get out and end up as bosses thugs. the daughter is pulled back by her father's death. Yeah. Right. The idea, there's definitely an element of like history to both the town and the story here, where characters can't escape their past. It's like an ongoing kind of issue for all of them, right?
And Gray Matter Hulk mentions about the football kids, and there's like a line that almost seems like a throwaway line where he says, like, "Oh, get it done, but don't take any of my starters to do it because I need them. I don't want them getting hurt." So like he's clearly using the football kids to, do his jobs, like whatever the case may be, around town. I thought that was just an interesting way to let you know about that.
You both mentioned the idea that that Boss is really only worried about football, and it's clearly for Volume 2, it's what motivates him to do everything is the desire to be on that field, participating in some manner, and at the same time, it's what drives him to just let his lackeys do whatever the heck they want. They run slapshot on this town and do whatever they feel like doing, and it's what gets our hero Earl into so much trouble in Volume 1, is that those guys are doing whatever they want, knowing that Boss, as long as he gets his starters there on Friday nights, he doesn't care.
And it's funny because I think, one of Earl's big failures is that he assumes that people will stand up against Coach Boss when he calls for help, when he's like, he basically, goes to the town square, more for lack of a better term, and says, "Hey, I know there are good people in this town, and you shouldn't have to live under this rule." And someone throws a rock at him, and like nobody stands at his back. So they're either too scared of him, or they're just like, he's winning football games, I don't care.
Which seems to be the truth.
Yeah, both of those.
Gorvidal says, Tom Wolfe said, "You can't go home again." Although the third trade is called Homecoming, so we'll see, does seem to be an element for sure.
But that's also that's not the daughter's home.
No,
because
as far as we know, I mean,
well, it's, if he hadn't been back since he left for Vietnam, she must have been raised outside of Birmingham, the big city, as they call it.
Some people, Stave Buff in particular, mentioning the sheriff, who's a black sheriff in that town, but seems to be completely under the Coach Boss's thumb and just watches Earl get his head stoved in. I thought he was a very interesting character, but clearly a very weak individual overall.
But it's also interesting because he doesn't arrest Earl for assaulting the people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mostly because Coach Boss tells him not to, but still, it's interesting that he kind of like lets people deal with their own things their own way at the town. Like, so what does he even do?
He knows he's got to stay out of everything. He's got to let it happen the way other people want it, right?
He basically picks up drunks. We don't find out what Tutwiler did, right? We don't find out what he actually did, why they're after him?
No.
We don't, right? Okay. Yeah. So, so a lot of those characters that seem one-sided, just like we just said with Coach Boss, they start to get more color in that third volume. I actually forgot it, and when you guys started saying stuff, I just flipped through it, and now I'm going to go reread it after we get because there's even like, I don't know. Volume 3 would be cool to talk about too, but I won't even get into it. I'll just cut myself off.
Can I ask, is it done? Are they still producing issues, or is it finished?
No, it's not done. Every now and then in like a Jason Aaron AMA or something, or on Twitter, you'll see someone be like, "When are you going to finish this?" And the answer without him saying it is, I make too much money at Marvel, and they ask me to do a lot.
Right.
And then whatever Jason Latour's doing, it's almost always the artist, because he probably has scripts that he can make. Like, it's almost always the artist is like, "I got this other stuff. I can't do the image book."
Sure.
It's funny though, because we just read God of Thunder a couple weeks ago, which is another Aaron book, and it's comparatively, it's so dense and so heavy and so like, it just felt thick, like kind of goopy. And this felt so, like, I wouldn't say light, because that's not the right word at all, but it felt just like such an easier read, but it didn't feel like a cheap read. You know, you got just as much depth in the characters and the story, but it didn't feel like so much.
Could it be because I think from a complexity standpoint, the story isn't particularly like rich? There's not like a ton of character. This isn't like a sprawling epic. This is a very it feels like a very dense story in the sense that you're just looking at these small group of people, but the level of layers kind of going on for each of them, that's where the story is really.
There's definitely a minimalist aspect to it. And I think it's a lot more about tone. And I think we can, unless someone has, I know we have more about Jason Aaron, I know we'll talk about him, but I think a lot of that tone, so Jason Aaron actually lets Latour work a lot with it. And one of the things that like really sets us apart is Jason Latour's art. And there's obviously the covers are red, obviously that's a theme, but almost all of the art has this reddish tone to it. Like you always feel like it's dusk or maybe dawn. You know, it always feels like it's right after school and it's getting dark and they're at football practice. And I think a lot of that plays into that minimalist tone that I think Alec is talking about, where, you know, Thor, he's like packing in all this mythology. There's a whole bunch of characters. He's got to work in the love story. He's got to work in the action. There's got to be action every issue. You know what I mean? So you could see how there's a lot more, you know, just because it's for Marvel, you can see that it's a lot more dense because you're thinking about individual issues, where Jason Aaron clearly, after reading the first 2 volumes, and you'll see even more in volume 3, is he's world building, but the characters do have a lot more room to breathe. And Latour does a great job, except for one area, in just making it feel like, definitely not like, you know, the beach cities or inner city LA, you know, or Vegas or anywhere I'm from, you know, or the desert. You know, it just has this always dusk feel to it. And those characters sort of like breathe inside of it.
I guess the difference for me is that I don't want to, because God of Thunder was quite good, but this feels so much more like he wanted to write this.
Oh yeah.
You know, not to say that he didn't put his all into writing God of Thunder, because it was certainly very well considered and very well done, but this feels like he just enjoyed it more because it's his own thing, which makes sense. But
well, I think the level of sort of detail in the small universe that he's captured here is evident. Just the you feel the interconnectivity of all these characters, the way they know each other and their histories and their backstories and all that stuff. It feels so lived in that you can see the amount of thought that went into all the words that end up on these pages and all the art and the history of it. Because honestly, they go back through both of these trades to cover a lot of ground historically, to see how characters have come in contact with each other and dealt with each other and their own personal demons, and why people left and why people never left. And I think it's all very it's very rich, I think, overall.
I can jump into why it's an A- for me. Like one.
Yeah, you're saying something about the art.
Yeah, probably the one thing that, and rereading it, I saw it actually matches to what you were saying earlier about you talking about like TV shows and it being thematic. I think one part where it sort of drops off on that is, as you're reading it, there'll be panels where it's football, right? Especially in the second trade. And it's like the one part where the reddishness, the heavy reds don't work for me, because I think I lost it. Like I noticed it this time and I didn't notice it when I read it before. Then I'm supposed to be reading this, and if it were a TV show, there'd be a cut scene of him hitting a guy really hard, right? And then it would be him talking to another character we haven't talked about yet, the blind black guy. I forget his name now.
The assistant coach, basically, yeah.
Yeah, he's the defensive coordinator. What was his name?
Big.
Yeah, Biggs. And then it would cut to him talking to Biggs. And I think it was just a piece that at least didn't work for me. I could see it would work for someone else. And a lot of that was because where the coloring worked in this other way that I said it didn't work, thematically for me. I really just noticed it, this read that, oh, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to have a conversation and show a hit, and I've seen this in football movies and other action movies and stuff. And I thought that some of the action got drowned out, especially in volume 2, where it didn't so much get drowned out like when Earl Tubbs was like beating people up with a stick and whatnot, but I think some of that is probably why I didn't give it like a straight A. It would be that one little gripe. But it's funny though, because it's a gripe about something in another form of the book. It works. That red tone worked for me so much in another space, just not where it was supposed to be like cutting scene to scene to scene. So
and overall, I'm a big fan of the art. I think it not only services the story really well, but it's just like I find it very attractive to look at. Yeah.
He's a great cartoonist. And something I always do when we read whole trades, I love the when they show the variant covers and the sketches, and most of the time you get a completely different take. I think Monsters was an example. That's the book I reviewed with you guys a few weeks ago. When you look back there, you got a completely different take than what Sana Takeda, or was that the writer or whoever the artist was, does. And the variant covers for this book, they don't stray too much, and I think that's actually a call to how good Jason Latour did, because these artists, even though you could see it's a different style, they didn't go that far away from what we from what we're used to, or they were chosen to not have like an anime style writer. That's probably the biggest departure, but that's still cartoony. You still have like
the color palette, like you're saying, stays the same.
You still can't see Earl Tubbs' eyes, for example.
The sort of craggy nature. I feel like the whole town has this sort of craggy, wrinkled nature to it. Everybody, even the young characters, look like they've just seen hard times.
Yeah, and the dog that's just always around,
crapping everywhere.
Page 1, panel 1 is just a dog taking a huge dump on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's a great way to start. That's actually was a wonderful way to start, just to set the tone. Actually, no reds in that either. Just to set the tone to what you're coming after is just a dog taking a dump on the side of the road.
Boom. And Image Comics presents.
Proudly presents this turd.
So now, Alec, have you gone beyond volume 2 at all?
I have not, no.
Okay. And Chris, are you fully caught up?
I don't know. I never know when it's a long time ago. I can't find volume 4, so perhaps I've not read it.
Okay. I've bought volumes 2, 3, and 4 just like a week ago, but I've not gone past volume 1 and 2. Alec, do you have interest in reading beyond?
Yeah, for sure. I'm invested enough in the story and the characters, and especially with Chris saying that volume 3 takes yet another kind of tonal shift. It kind of intrigues me even more. So yeah, I would definitely keep reading this.
And clearly, Chris, are you getting the individual issues or just the trades? Are you continuing?
Yeah, I was always buying this in trades. I have to figure out if I watched. I guess it's that thematic, guys. To figure out if I read volume 4. But even this, I'll reread volume 3, and then if I haven't read volume 4, I'll read that short. I'll probably definitely read that shortly. I don't know when it'll continue though, so sometimes that turns people off, because I don't know if volume 4 ends on a cliffhanger, but I know a lot of people keep asking about it. So.
Gotcha. So Stay Puft says he said there was a big break between volumes 3 and 4, so some people lost track of where they were in that run.
Might have been me.
Hey, God Tank, good to see you in here, brother. Thank you for coming by. So I am very interested in reading volume 3. Volume 2 ends on a really kind of fun cliffhanger, like a I think I know where this story is going. To have Chris say, you don't know anything, is kind of like fun to know that, okay, yet again, this story might really throw some curves our way. And that's the fun of it. Honestly, you might think you understand Southern Bastards from our little chat here and that you don't need to read it, but you should definitely check it out, because I think like the chat is telling you, you'll be really blown away by the twists, by the talent of the artists and writers involved, and it's definitely worth your time. Maybe we'll have to do a volume 3 here at some point if you guys are down for that.
Yeah. Another off week when there's nothing good coming out.
Hey, we're having a lot of those these days, I get a feeling. So
Jason Latour actually writes issue 12, which I didn't realize.
Huh,
yeah.
Interesting.
I have a question for you guys. So buying this in trade is a different story. You get everything at once and stuff. But they were actually super short arcs. I think they were both 4 issues. I mean, I think I know the answer, but because Jason Aaron decided that that's how you can tell each arc. I think that really worked, and I think that's a big pro to like the Image style, where you can just do whatever you want, right? So long as it's selling so much. But a 4-issue arc is weird. A 4-issue trade is weird, but there's a lot of writers, this could have still been a good trade if you stretched out 2 more issues, and a lot of writers would have done that. What do you guys think about that? Because I can't even think really of a 4-issue Image book recently that that would they just put 4 issues in here and then continue on. So
yeah, I mean, I think he's got the benefit of being Jason Aaron and saying, I want to do this book and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And Image probably like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's certainly unusual. And even when I was reading them, I was like, boy, that didn't seem like 6 issues. And I went back and looked and I'm like, oh, it's because it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I would rather have a writer tell a story the way they want to than to try to stretch it out into some sort of mold that is going to fit the size of a trade or whatever the case may be, or even the size of an issue.
Well, and let's talk about the benefit to the reader is both of these trades are $9.99. Like the price per book is wonderfully low.
Right, because all Image volume 1s are $9.99, but usually the second ones are $15.
Those are the ones when you get up to the 16.
So the fact that they priced it appropriately also helps. But it's like how Netflix has the ability on their shows to be like, well, you don't have to stick to an hour runtime or half an hour runtime. You make the episodes however long you want to tell your story,
or the length of seasons.
Right. Yeah. So go for it, dude. I'm all for it.
And there still are constraints too. He still has the issue constraint. Like every issue ended, with an ending. You still have page constraints. Yeah. It's not like he's just
doing some sort of weird experimental thing.
Yeah, or it's a original graphic novel alone. So it still reads like a bunch of issues. He just decides that this is a 4-issue arc, and that's what he's going to put in the trade. So. And I think that works great. Fitting everything in 6 issues doesn't always make sense. So
absolutely. Well, and when you argue like $20 for this, that's a steal in quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I paid way less than that because I bought them digitally. Volume 1 was free on Comixology Unlimited, which I signed up for a free trial for that, so I didn't pay anything for that. And Volume 2 was $4 or $5.
Oh, nice. Comixology is a great deal for all that stuff. I've been paying it forever. The hardcover though is $30, but I didn't pay $30.
Is that 2 volumes or 1 volume?
It's 2 volumes. I didn't pay $30 for it though. I had the trades and I saw the hardcover for cheap. But now I'm wondering if it was so cheap because it doesn't have a dust jacket. So, maybe I got ripped off. I have to go check if this is supposed to have a dust jacket.
I'm the kind of guy, like I would always pay a little extra for a hardcover though.
Yeah, especially if this was like a very important book to me, like that it was okay. I've read a ton. I've always read Fantagraphic stuff, and like I said, whatever's on the Eisners. But this felt like as mainstream as you could be, and not be like straight fantasy, straight science fiction, straight superhero. Totally. So. Yeah, so when I saw it on a hardcover for cheap, I grabbed it, even though I have the trades. So,
Well, this was everything I hoped that it would be as far as talking about a book that I was super pumped on. I bought a ton of Image trades, and this was the one that for me lived up to the hype the most. I mean, I've enjoyed all of them. I haven't hated any of them, but this was the one that I was already preparing to buy the follow-up volumes. So thanks for letting me guys do this for tonight. And Chris, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good to
Do
see
you have
again.
any videos? Sorry, you were saying something?
No, I said good to see you again.
Good to see you too. You guys jumped from Golden Guys right onto here. You guys would just take a.
We just
hot
keep
break?
rocking and rolling. Our Wednesday night is one big show.
I got to deal with this guy for 2 hours.
So, Chris, do you have? I mean, you dropped review videos pretty constantly. Do you have something coming up this next few days people should check out, or anything they dropped the last few days?
No, my trick to not getting subscribers is to either drop 7 videos in a day or 1 video in 7 weeks. So I haven't really dropped anything in a couple weeks, and it's when I feel like it or have time or think I have something to say. So the last one up there is from Ludocrats, and it's like 2 weeks ago. So
Inconsistency is key.
Yeah, I'm a big inconsistent guy. Yeah, so.
But you guys should totally check out Chris's channel. He's underselling the joy and fun of comics that he's got on there. Good reads and good reviews. But his channel is linked in the description below. You can click on it, get over there and check him out. He's in all the chats. He's definitely worth hanging out with. Alec, I think you've only got something coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, D&D. Been John and I and Daymares and Big Will and JP and Comics with Explained and I have been live streaming D&D on Sundays. It is a good time. At least we're having fun with it. I don't know how fun it is to watch, but stop by if you want to see us roll some dice.
Right? So that it's honestly the highlight of my week these days is hanging out and talking D&D every Sunday. So it's been a lot of fun doing that.
On whose channel?
We will
It's on my channel.
On your channel.
Yeah. This will be week 4, so you can go back and catch up on the last 3 weeks if you care to, or just jump in and not know what's going on.
Yeah.
We will get Stay Puff on a Wednesday show.
Definitely.
Soon. He knows his books. Definitely want to hang out with him. Disappointed that I wasn't on because I'm off today and I wanted to be on Wednesday nights with you guys. How about we do volumes 3 and 4? We bring you back in here and get you in with us to discuss the second round here.
I'd like to force one of our I guess the other thing we didn't point out, I know you're trying to end the show, John, I'm sorry.
Fine.
The other thing we didn't point out is that we're outsiders looking in. It would be interesting to see what one of the Two Brothers guys or Big Will or someone from the South has to say about the book,
From the inside, more of an insider's perspective.
Yeah, that living in that area and experiencing that world a little more closely.
Yeah, because we're watching this crime fiction, right? But I mean, Big Will will be like, yeah, everyone's crazy about. I don't even know if Big Will likes football, but they're all idiots here. You know what I mean, or something.
Chaos wore a Bad Religion T-shirt in his videos. Hence, I will check out his videos. Always.
In the past, I have.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm on Saturday with the girls and Sunday with Alec. I don't think I've got anything else going on the next few days. I said I would check in with Perry. He's been doing his video movie, rewatches, and then Saturday nights he likes to talk movies live. So I might jump in with him and just broaden his understanding of movies a little bit Saturday night. But that's all I got on the schedule. So I hope to see people on some of those shows. And next week, we got a new Image #1. Alec realized.
Yeah, we're back to actual new Comic Book Day book club.
Right? I had not realized that there was anything good dropping. Apparently, next week on Wednesday, there's an Image #1 written by Matt Fraction, drawn by the Dodsons.
It's called Adventure Man.
I don't even need the title. I don't need the title. I mean, they need the title.
Yeah. Looks
It's
cool.
called
Adventure Man.
Adventure Man from Image. So we're going to review that next week.
Good, interesting creative team. Looking forward to it.
if anybody in the chat or anybody on Instagram, whatever, wants to roll the dice and join us to talk about an image number one that we have no clue about, but we know Fraction and Dodson are involved. So come on, you're going to see quality drawings with good writing. What else could you expect?
Two great tastes that taste great together.
I'm saying.
I read the solicit. I know what happens.
Shh. Don't ruin it for us, Chris. Come on. I'm going to stay as blind to this thing until I get it in my hands. All right, everybody. We're going to get out of here. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon. Don't do stuff with the ocean.
Bye.
Bye.